they gave fake news that has been proven.
But Jen, you coming on the national radio station here on LBC and saying an 82-year-old man being arrested is an attack on free speech without having a clue what he's actually said is not fake news at all.
Bro is killing it. I really don't have to say much. What he just said is perfect. I gotta say, what a pivot. What a pivot there. The way that she tries to spin this story is kind of impressively bad and funny, and I really appreciate that. Let's just take a second here. We need to talk, y'all. We need to talk about what a pivot is. I'm always surprised by the people that aren't as familiar with this terminology. Why would you be if you don't follow a lot of debates? I just want to break this down for you real fast because I think it's going to be very, very helpful in the future of my videos, and I don't want to have to keep explaining it over. Let's go ahead and take a quick look at what I'm talking about here. A pivot in debates is a strategic technique where a speaker avoids answering a direct question and instead shifts the conversation to a related topic of their choosing. It is a way to answer a question on their own terms, steer the debate towards their own talking points, and avoid responding to a challenging question. Don't think that needs further elaboration. It's pretty self-evident if you were watching this conversation here. Let's dig in a little bit more. I want to just quickly explain how this works, right? A speaker may briefly acknowledge the question before transitioning to a pre-planned response, often using a story or example to shift the flow of the argument. Again, I think this is a great example of that in this video. It's a very short video. It's only 10 minutes, if that. And she just does a great job of not really answering the question. The alternative media thing is a clear pivot in how she starts asking these questions about things. Like, she's not actually engaging in what the guy is saying. She's just pivoting, right? And so I feel like this is obvious, but it's important just to hammer this home. But the purpose of a pivot is a candidate can control the narrative, control the topics under discussion, and refrain from engaging with or refuting their opponent's position. Basically, it's just a way of avoiding the actual point or the question or the thing that they're being challenged with. They just avoid the whole entire engagement by just talking about different things until the debate ends. You'll notice that a lot of conversations don't actually resolve themselves. If you watch enough debates, I've watched hundreds of hours of debates at this point, maybe thousands, sadly. A lot of times these conversations don't get resolved because people delay, they avoid, they pivot, they obfuscate, they just say words to kill time, right? There's a really easy term for this. I'm losing it right now. I know they're trying to ban it in the Senate or whatever now too, but whatever. Anywho, basically, she's just dodging. She's dodging left and right. Like she's Neo in the Matrix right now, just dodging all of these questions. It's ridiculous. It's kind of wild to me. Let's continue on. Let's finish this video and we'll talk a little bit more. Imagine a political show discussing a crucial topic like media censorship, right? And the guests being unable to provide a single concrete example when asked. That is exactly what we're going to be covering in this LBC debate with former Trump consultant Jan Halper Hayes. The question isn't, did she fail? The question is, why did she think she could get away with it, right? And I'm already leading here, and I hate to be that guy that leads the topic, but this one is pretty cut and dry. This is a British show called LBC. I don't know what it stands for, but the guy on the show, his name is Ben Kentish, and he is speaking with a former Trump consultant named Jan Halper Hayes. She has experience in the political world. She was a consultant, I believe, during the first administration for Donald Trump. No longer is she doing that. I'm not super familiar with her work. We're going to dive deep into the psychology of a speaker who seems to assume her audience, hopefully you, if you're more on the Trump supporting or conservative side, if you're a Republican, hoping that you would accept the rhetoric that she's giving without any valid evidence. We're going to be breaking down this conversation, especially the moment where her entire argument collapses. So stick around, because we're not just reacting. We're going to be giving you the tools to help you avoid being fooled by speakers like this in the future. Now, if you're new to this channel, if you're new to the stream, my name is Tavian, aka Philosopher, and I am somebody who likes to talk about politics, to break these things down and help demystify some of these tactics that a lot of people in the political sphere are doing. I am not a Democrat. I have to keep saying this because I'm very critical of Democrats. I am not a conservative. I'm not a Republican. I'm not liberal. I'm not a socialist. I am just somebody who's figuring out the world of politics, and I want to be as critical as possible. I want to recognize hypocrisy when it happens, regardless who is doing it and what affiliation they have. So I get a lot of people calling me the opposite party whenever I'm criticizing their side. So to understand, I criticize both sides equally. Right now, I'm focusing a lot on the political party that is known as Republicans, or anybody specifically that supports Donald Trump these days, because I think it's a problem. But we're going to go ahead and we're going to dig into this and we're going to cover this topic. So let's go ahead and watch.
J.D. Vance. He is in town. He's in Kent, I believe it is, at Chevening, the Grace and Favour mansion for the Foreign Secretary David Lammy, where he's spending a couple of days before holidaying in the Cotswolds with his family. He's had another dig about the lack of free speech, as he sees it, in the United Kingdom, saying he has raised concerns, and will continue to, that the West, including Britain, is censoring rather than engaging with different opinions. You might remember he's previously suggested that free speech is under threat in this country. What on earth is the bloke banging on about? Dr. Jan Halper Hayes is a former consultant to Donald Trump's presidential transition team in 2016, former chair of Republicans Overseas UK. Jan, great to have you with us here on LBC. What's J.D. Vance talking about? He's got this bugbear, hasn't he? Got this chip on his shoulder about Britain having lost the right to free speech. What is he talking about? Morning.
Well, good morning. It's funny that you think that he's taking a dig. Do you not think that when an 82-year-old man is arrested for posting something on Facebook, that is not a form of censorship?
Well, it depends what he posts, doesn't it? Depends if it's legal.
Well,
what did that 82-year-old man post?
Well, let's back up a minute here. If we are starting to scrutinize everything that someone says, if we're arresting them because...
Right out of the gate, this lady denies the point that this guy is saying. He says that J.D. Vance is taking a dig. That means that he's verbally attacking. He's scrutinizing, right? So I don't know if she said she lives in the UK, so I assume she knows that term before she even defends it. The way she's answering this question, and you can already see her hesitancy. He asked a very simple follow-up question.
What did that 82-year-old man post?
Well, let's back up a minute here.
Right out of the gate, she's here specifically to talk about censorship and how it's a problem in the UK. And already she has an example ready to go, talking about an 80-year-old man on Facebook getting in trouble for something. But let's look at how that conversation proceeds.
What is that? You mentioned a specific case there. What is it this 82-year-old was arrested for?
Honestly, I can't remember, but you're
telling me that it's outrageous that an 82-year-old man was... No, sorry, okay. This is important because you just said this is an example of free speech under threat in the UK, but you can't tell me what he was arrested for.
I don't remember the
So why are you bringing it up then?
What is she on the show for if she doesn't have a way to explain the point that she's trying to make? Why did she come to the show so unprepared, right? You could say maybe she's just a little nervous, right? Maybe she gets a little better later on. We'll see how that goes. It seems like she wasn't really expecting any pushback. I don't know the terms of the agreement, but you'll see her say this a couple times where she's like, let's back up, right? And it's like she didn't think about what she said before she said it. So just pay attention to this. If you are someone who is on her side, right, at the start of this conversation, just listen, be objective, and let's just try to break this down together.
I brought it up as an example that if we are scrutinizing what an 82-year-old man posts on Facebook...
But you can't assess that without knowing what he said, can you?
Well, you know what? Let's just say I brought up a wrong example because I don't have the context
Could it possibly be because it's all a load of nonsense and free speech isn't under threat in the UK at all, which I think you've just demonstrated respectfully?
You know what? I've been there I've lived in the UK for 24 years.
So I want to point out real quick that she doesn't actually answer the question. She does this a couple times where she doesn't answer the question that she's being asked. She likes to pivot, and we'll circle back to that. We'll pivot back to pivots later on so that we can break that down a little bit if you're not super familiar with that term or you've heard it but you don't know what it means. But she doesn't answer the actual question. And I also have to give praise to Ben. Throughout this conversation, he does a good job of asking very, very simple, fairly non-leading questions. and tries to remain neutral while also bringing up very valid points or counterpoints to what she's saying. Already out of the gate, she's off to a bad start. She doesn't have the full context of the example that she was trying to give. Why did you open with an example that you didn't even know the full context for? Like that, I don't know if that's arrogance or stupidity or nervousness or what, but you can already say, even if you're on her side, that's not a good look. That's not a good look right out of the gate.
And as political correctness moved from accusing people of microaggressions and then people getting triggered over what somebody said, it has been a form of putting a speech straitjacket on people.
So what can't you say in the UK right now without being arrested that you think people should have the right to say?
You know what? That's a very good question.
It is. Thank you.
It is. I can't answer that question, and I can't give you an example exactly. But see,
so
what
you've given
I
me an
find
example of free.
interesting-
Sorry, Jen. You've given me an example of free speech being under threat. You can't tell me what the person said. I'll ask you for one single thing that you can't say in the UK without the fear of being arrested, and you can't think of anything. It's because Britain still is a country, compared to the United States, by the way, where free speech absolutely exists and always will.
I don't need to say much here because Ben does a great job of just covering it for me, so we're going to keep this short. Why is she on the show if she doesn't have good examples for what she's saying? Like, what was she planning on talking about? I say that even though when I watch a lot of like traditional media, legacy media, when I have the nerve to watch some of those, I do see a lack of pushback. I guess maybe because she thought she was going to a British show, maybe they wouldn't know as much, or you wouldn't be as like knowledgeable, or she didn't do her homework. But come on, y'all, let's take out the bias that we're trying to defend her or attack her. Let's be neutral and just observe her ability to have a conversation and cover the topic that she's here to cover, right? And it ain't looking good from my perspective. I don't think she's doing a great job at all. She's not convincing anybody of anything.
Well, we both see it differently then.
But you can't give me any single point of evidence whatsoever to back up your idea.
Why don't you give me an example of how free speech still exists and censorship is not there?
You don't get arrested by the police for saying anything that isn't incitement or hate speech in this country. People are free to express their opinions. People are free to give their views. We do not have a police state in this country, unlike, I might say, the way that the United States is going under Donald Trump.
Well, you know, that's interesting because it's not going that way with Donald Trump.
So this guy quickly lists off 4 examples, kind of 5, because he gives a counterexample of America doing that. So that's technically 4 examples, but both sides of an example very quickly, mind you. He just fires them off. Bam, 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 bam. Like just quick with it. Her response is what? Exactly. What is her response? What did she say? It is wild. It is wild. I don't feel like I have to say much. I have a lot of notes here, but upon listening to this for a third time, I just really feel like her behavior speaks for itself. And it's like, why can't she come up with an example? And also, I do find it hypocritical that she isn't able to actually provide any examples, but then flips the question, moves the burden of proof onto Ben when she herself can't even defend the argument that she's here to defend. So what is the deal with that?
It was going that way, and it's now reversing itself.
Right. So banning journalists from the White House because you don't like what they've written, demanding the impeachment of judges because you don't like what they've ruled, sacking government officials because they've dared to criticize you at any point in recent years, defunding universities because they're not doing what you do, threatening law firms if they don't toe the party line, defunding media organizations that you think are against you, arresting students because of what they've written on social media, and ramping up checks of people entering the UK to check they haven't posted anything on Facebook that you don't like, doesn't amount to any sort of attack on free speech.
That's really twisting things without the specific examples. You're giving you're giving examples the same way I gave the example.
But you didn't give any examples, and I've just given you 10.
No, you've just given me a very biased perspective.
Bias is facts. All of those things have happened. Which of those haven't happened? Have journalists been banned from the White House under the Trump administration?
Have journalists been banned, or have they brought in alternative media that presents a different.
I'm not talking.
What did he say?
What did she say? What did she just say? Did she say alternative media? That isn't even a response to the question that she was asked. He asked her specifically if media was banned from going to the White House, which I believe is the Pentagon specifically, because they didn't sign that agreement that they were trying to put out. But I think also they were banning people from the White House as well. And the fact that she pivots from the question to giving alternative media, come on, y'all. That's not an answer to the question, first off. And then second off, twisting the alternative facts spin into alternative media. Bro gives 8 good examples, specific examples that she ignores and puts on the same level as her example, which I suppose she's now acknowledging was a bad example since she's trying to diminish the quality of his examples to put it on the same level as hers. But he's actually more specific. She said an 82-year-old person posting on Facebook and I don't think she said the repercussions. I don't think she said what he posted. She didn't say what he posted for sure, but I don't think she even talked about the repercussions, whereas he listed off specific examples and consequences that have happened directly because of the Trump administration. So for her to just go and talk about alternative media instead of actually acknowledging what this guy is saying, y'all, come on, help me understand this. Help me understand what is going on here, because this is really, it is laughably bad in my opinion how she is doing this. I don't think much more needs to be said there. So let's go ahead and continue on.
Angle.
Have journalists from organizations like the Associated Press been banned by the White House? Yes or no?
Yes, they have.
Right. Have judges been threatened with
But
impeachment
wait a minute.
because the White House doesn't like their rulings? Yes
Wait a
or no?
minute. Let's not do it that way.
This is like the let's back it up thing. Let's not do it that way. What do you mean? Let's not do it that way. Let's not answer questions directly. Let's find a way to spin the story. What is you talking about? What is you talking about? This is ridiculous.
Let's go back
Because
to
the
that.
answer is
And
yes.
why were they? Why were they banned?
But so
They
we
were-
accept, right? Are we accepting that all the things I just
You know
suggested
what?
have
If
happened?
you don't let me finish, then we can't really have a conversation here, because you've got a very biased perspective
I'm not
here,
biased at
a
all.
very angle.
I'm giving you fact.
That's projection, because she's the one that clearly has a bias. Like, she's not being honest. He's able to answer questions directly and give specific examples. She's not.
So I'm just asking whether you recognize that those things are true.
No. You know what? It's so interesting. Did we not have a bunch of fake news here? And in the US, we did. And why? Why did we have fake news? Because it was biased and it was wrong. And so that is one of the reasons. You know, you're
She didn't specify who.
listing 10 things and cutting me off.
All right.
But then why was the Associated Press no longer welcome? They gave fake news that has been
but
proven.
Jan, you coming on the national radio station here on LBC and saying an 82-year-old man being arrested is an attack on free speech without having a clue what he's actually said is not fake news at all.
Damn!
Bro is killing it. I really don't have to say much. What he just said is perfect. I gotta say, what a pivot. What a pivot there. The way that she tries to spin this story is kind of impressively bad and funny. And I really appreciate that. Let's just take a second here. We need to talk, y'all. We need to talk about what a pivot is. I'm always surprised by the people that aren't as familiar with this terminology. Why would you be if you don't follow a lot of debates? I just want to break this down for you real fast, because I think it's going to be very, very helpful in the future of my videos, and I don't want to have to keep explaining it over. Let's go ahead and take a quick look at what I'm talking about here. A pivot in debates is a strategic technique where a speaker avoids answering a direct question and instead shifts the conversation to a related topic of their choosing. It is a way to answer a question on their own terms, steer the debate towards their own talking points, and avoid responding to a challenging question. Don't think that needs further elaboration. It's pretty self-evident if you were watching this conversation here. Let's dig in a little bit more. I want to just quickly explain how this works, right? A speaker may briefly acknowledge the question before transitioning to a pre-planned response, often using a story or example to shift the flow of the argument. Again, I think this is a great example of that in this video. It's a very short video. It's only 10 minutes, if that. And she just does a great job of not really answering the question. The alternative media thing is a clear pivot in how she starts asking these questions about things. Like, she's not actually engaging in what the guy is saying. She's just pivoting. Right. And so I feel like this is obvious, but it's important just to hammer this home. But the purpose of a pivot is a candidate can control the narrative, control the topics under discussion, and refrain from engaging with or refuting their opponent's position. Basically, it's just a way of avoiding the actual point or the question or the thing that they're being challenged with. They just avoid the whole entire engagement by just talking about different things until the debate ends. You'll notice that a lot of conversations don't actually resolve themselves. If you watch enough debates, I've watched hundreds of hours of debates at this point, maybe thousands. Sadly, a lot of times these conversations don't get resolved because people delay, they avoid, they pivot, they obfuscate, they just say words to kill time, right? There's a really easy term for this. I'm losing it right now. I know they're trying to ban it. And
it's not that I haven't had a clue. I can't remember the specifics.
Right.
But the fact that
But how can you know it's an attack on free speech if you can't remember what he'd actually said?
Well, you know, it's very interesting because you started this off by saying J.D. Vance had a dig. And so we don't get to have an intelligent...
Another pivot, by the way. This is another pivot, totally irrelevant from the point. He made a comment about how J.D. Vance was digging at him, and now she's back to the beginning of the conversation that has nothing to do with the actual substance of the conversation. And she's acting like it's his fault because he said that and it was unresolved. So she's using that unresolved part of the conversation as a way to pivot away from acknowledging the points that he's making, the great points that he's making, by the way.
Discussion about whether there really is censorship going on, if people are afraid to speak out. But
he has had a dig, and that's his own language. He said previously when he talked about the UK.
No, you called it a dig.
Well,
He made a statement. He made an observation.
His language previously, I need to beat up on the UK. So don't try and tell me that he's not having a dig when he himself has admitted that he, as he put it, needs to beat up on the UK. We've got to leave it there. Thank you very much, Steve, for coming on. Jan Halper Hayes, former consultant to Donald Trump's presidential transition team in 2016, former chair of Republicans Overseas UK.
And there you have it. Like I mentioned before, the conversation was unresolved because there's a limited amount of time. And I mentioned this with Charlie Kirk too, where when you're debating somebody, there's a time limit that's set. So at the very least, you can make it look like you're not a loser in the debate by just delaying the conversation, and then you'll be saved by the bell, basically. Again, I don't know this lady, but she was hired by Trump to be an advisor. She got fired, so maybe she just wasn't good at her job, because I don't know what she would be advising him on, because she can't talk about the simplest things. Like, how do you call into a show across the country? You're representing America, you're representing Trump and his administration to an extent, right? Former consultant, but still representing Trump, you know, defending America and his administration, but you don't do the simplest of homework. These are the people that are manipulating a lot of conservatives, a lot of Republicans into believing that these are good people with valid thoughts, right? You know, it's nothing against, I don't have anything against anybody that is more right-leaning, more conservative Republican. But if you support Donald Trump, if you support the MAGA movement, if you support a lot of these things that are happening blindly and you're not willing to ask questions, that's a problem. And as I shown you in this video, this lady was so arrogant, so confident that she came onto the show with no examples to give and thought that she was right, even when faced with valid counterpoints to what she was saying, and tried to dodge around the actual point. It is the epitome of entitlement and arrogance for somebody to do this kind of behavior and represent us in another country, a call-in show in another country. It's embarrassing as an American. You should be embarrassed as an American that she represents us, right? I don't care what your political affiliation is. She's stupid. And this is where I start getting into the less civil part of the conversation and the more, my opinion, hard opinion part of the conversation, is that this person's attempt to try to rewrite history and do it across seas is pathetic and stupid, right? I don't know how to put it nicely, because she called in to talk about this topic. It's not like somebody called her and was soliciting her blindly out of nowhere, like, hey, we'd like to talk to you about car insurance, and also let's talk a little bit about censorship in America from the media. That's not how the conversation went. She had to agree to this conversation and she didn't do her damn homework. Why the hell is she representing us? That is ridiculous. When people like her call in on these debate shows or when they're on CNN or Fox News and they're talking about this shit and they can't even articulate their points. They can't even actually finish a full example. She didn't have a full example. An 82-year-old guy posted something on Facebook. That's the end of her example. Not what he said, not what happened to him, not why he got in trouble or if he even got in trouble. We don't know. And we have to take what she's saying as truth. And this guy comes with valid, specific examples, not just in the UK, but also in America as to how censorship is happening in America and is very valid. And she has to twist history, twist reality to make it work, to sell her point, which she did fucking horribly, by the way. I'm sorry if you like this lady or you agree with her point. If you agree, even after everything that I just said, tell me why. Bring some validity to the conversation. I want engagement. I want you to prove me wrong. I want you to prove me wrong, right? I don't want to be right because I think it's ridiculous that I live in a world where I believe that somebody just called into a show over in the UK to defend an argument, but didn't have any valid points and couldn't actually articulate anything to back up her argument. Leave a comment. Let me know if you want to have a conversation with me. We can do it live on my live stream on Sundays. We do this every Sunday. We cover topics and then get into gaming afterwards. Sunday around 6 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. Make sure you subscribe, hit the notification bell, and as always, I'll see you all in the next one.